First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers of this seminar for giving me the chance to present this research that belongs to work in progress of my PhD pertaining to the classical reception studies, more specifically to the reception of the myth of Demeter and Persephone in the contemporary English language poetry. I will start with a brief introduction addressing Rita Dove and Mother Love. Then I will explore the Narcissus flower, the myth of Demeter and Persephone. After that, I will examine Persephone's vulnerability and resilience, finishing with some brief conclusions. Rita Dove is a preeminent African-American author who has written multiple books of poetry, a play, a song cycle, a collection of essays and short stories, and a novel. Some of her major writings are The Darker Phase of the Earth or Thomas and Beulah, which received a Pulitzer Prize. Her writings address theology, autobiography, and mythology. Also, Rita Dove was the first African-American poet laureate from 1993 to 1995. Then, it is in 1995 that she got her book of poetry, Mother Love, published. Mother Love addresses classical receptions, African-American traits, and the contemporary reality. It comprises 35 sonnets, and it approaches different mother-daughter situations. One of the poems that considers mother love is the Narcissus flower, which is the subject of today's presentation. Mother Love as a whole addresses the myth of Demeter and Persephone despite the fact that they are divine figures. The Homeric hymn to Demeter and the poetry of Rita Dove refer to how these goddesses are feminine archetypes whose experience is transferable to the human sphere. And in this case, that of the female who often suffers male violence, as it is the case of the myth of Persephone. The myth of Demeter tells the story of how Persephone is playing and plucking flowers while she stretches her hands and unplucks the Narcissus, and the earth opens. Like the ancient tale, Dove gives us a perspective of what happened as we read, "I remember my foot in its frivolous slipper, a frightened bird, not the earth unzipped, but the way I could see my own fingers and hear myself scream as the blossom incinerated." The verb remember catches the eye since this indicates that this is a memory that takes the reader back to the original setting, which is a field or a meadow where Persephone was abducted. Then Persephone assimilates herself to a frightened bird, which points out how scared she was as the earth opened. To enhance Persephone's feelings, Dove uses the sensory verbs see and hear. Also, the way the blossom incinerated could be a metaphorical association with Persephone, who is compared to a flower in the ancient tale, and now she screams when the flowers burn, mimicking her descent to the underworld. The ancient myth tells how, after the earth opened, Hades carried Persephone away in his golden chariot, while she was crying and asking for help. In this contemporary poem, Dove highlights Hades' role as the oppressor as we read, "And though nothing could chasten the plunge, this man, adamant as a knife, easing into the humblest crevice, I found myself at the center of a calm so pure it was hate." Here, Dove emphasizes the female suffering at the hands of a male through Persephone's abduction and asserts Persephone's feelings. In the Homeric hymn to Demeter, when Persephone was abducted, Demeter roamed the earth for 9 days looking for her daughter, and on the 10th day Hecate approaches her and tells her that although she has not seen what had happened, she knows that Helios, the god of the sun, knows what had happened. So they go ahead and see him, and indeed he tells them that Hades has abducted Persephone with Zeus's permission. So this makes Demeter very upset. She disguises herself among humanity, she takes care of a human child, and then her anger is triggered and she stops vegetation from growing. After this, Zeus tried to summon Demeter so that she joins the other divinities in Olympus, but she refuses to join them until she sees Persephone back. So Zeus has no choice but to send Hermes to the underworld to bring Persephone back. When Hermes addresses Hades, Hades shows to be very understanding. He lets Persephone go, but before she leaves, he puts a pomegranate seed into her mouth and tells her all the honors and sacrifices that she will acquire as his wife. So Persephone reunites herself with Demeter, tells her version of the story. Demeter restores vegetation and establishes her mysteries. I believe that Dove is playing with the original, with an allusion to the original myth as we read. The mystery is you can eat fear before fear eats you. You can live beyond dying and become a queen whom nothing surprises. Also, the fact that that Persephone embraces her role as the goddess of the underworld is already foreshadowed by Hades in the ancient tale, as he tells her all the honors that she will acquire as his wife. If we follow Chakraborty and Garland's understanding of crime associated to vulnerability, we see Persephone as vulnerable as she is been victimized by a crime. Then Verocanas, Lyuskiv, and Kuronev address victimhood and vulnerability altogether, which also resonates with Persephone's situation, being victimized by the abduction. As she says in lines 3 and 4, to hear myself scream, right? And then Brené Brown establishes a correlation between emotions and vulnerability, which definitely resonates with Persephone as she feels hate and fear. Quoting Feynman, resilience is measured by an individual's ability to survive or recover from harm or setbacks that inevitably occur over the life course. This is definitely what happens to Persephone. As she states in lines 10 and 11, you can eat fear before fear eats you. This is the moment she empowers herself with her own emotions, and you can live beyond dying and become a queen whom nothing surprises. Again, she finds empowerment in her suffering, and she becomes resilient. I have to conclude that Rita Dove definitely fills a gap in the original myth where little is known of what Persephone is thinking. It is true that Persephone gives her version of the events to Demeter when she goes back to her mother, but little is known of what she feels, and that's what Rita Dove enhances in her poem. Also, Persephone's vulnerability, as we have seen, stems from her victimhood and the crime that she suffers and her emotions. And then she reaches resilience while recovering from all those difficulties. Therefore, vulnerable Kore, who was a maiden, becomes resilient Persephone. Rita Dove gives Persephone resilience and empowerment as she is able to overcome her vulnerable emotions to reach a new life through strength. So that would be the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your attention, and here you have some references that you could check if you are interested in the topic. Thank you so much.